Hi everyone.
Hey,
Goodness, you were quick.
Yeah, I'm on it.
You
I'm
are
on
like
it.
tech lady, sweetie. Hi everyone, how are you? I was about to start like a long spiel about how I'm a tech dumbo, and we might have to wait 20 minutes because I don't know what I'm doing. But hey, look, here we are.
It flowed. It flowed.
Oh, that's because we got the synchronicity, babes. Hello, Adele.
Hi.
Hi everyone. So as I promised last week, this is Adele from Harmonize You, my very, very, very good friend and Earth Mother, who is, well, I'm actually going to let her explain to you because she'll probably do a much more succinct, a clever job at explaining who she is, and why I wanted, why we gel. And but yeah, you just start by to tell us briefly who you are and what you do, and maybe how your practice has changed to become more woman-centric and why.
Absolutely.
Please.
So I'm a women's health practitioner, which doesn't really tell you a lot about what I do. But my background was specialising working with young women who had experienced a lot of trauma within the youth justice context. But alongside that, I'd always trained in holistic therapies, been interested in women's health, but something just never quite felt the same. Something just didn't feel right about everything that I was doing. And then when I set my own business up a few years ago, I was seeing a lot of women who, like me, having been in a very senior position, were burnt out and exhausted, but doing everything we should be doing, everything we're told to be doing. And then I started understanding about women's cycles and the impact that they have on us, because this information is missing for so many women. We just aren't taught it. And it is a game changer, because most of the things we know to be true, we believe to be true about health, is based on research that has been undertaken on men, because women are difficult to research. We're hard to study because of our cycle.
Thank God you put that in as a caveat. I was about to say, oh God, we're just hard to study, are we?
We are.
Because of our cycles.
We are. We're complicated.
We are complicated.
What happens to men, which won't surprise most women, is from the minute they go through puberty to death, they pretty much do the same thing from a hormonal perspective. Wow. Whereas for women, we change every single day when we are cycling. And then we have these huge transitions. Our menarche, which is our first bleed, is completely a non-event for most women, or really embarrassing or scary for girls because they don't get the information. And then we kind of go through this understanding where our period is a bit of a curse. We're taught to just ignore it and power through and manage it with synthetic hormones. And then we crash land into perimenopause, which is kind of like this taboo subject and embarrassing and all this stuff. We don't talk about it. And women have these huge transitions and experiences, and everyone's pretending it's not happening, but they're huge. But when we start to work with our cycle, we can alleviate symptoms like PMT and how we suffer with our bleed. We turn it on its head, and everything changes when we understand our cycle. And I am so passionate about sharing this knowledge with as many women as I can, because you will feel better. So does that make sense?
That was a really amazing summary of what you do, and also just a little delve into what are we doing? Why are we not celebrating the menarche, the beginning of our periods, the end of our periods? We definitely don't celebrate the beginning. And I know culturally, like, oh my God, when I started my period and I was about 12, I remember Mum had those like Dr. White things. They were about the size of like a
mattresses.
Yeah. And they had little loops, and you had to like put a belt around. Yeah. Can you imagine? But I remember her, bless her, and this is probably because this is what her mum had done. She started like crying. She's like, oh my God, you are a woman now. What is going to happen? Not in a good way. She was obviously worried, bless her, that now I could potentially get pregnant. That's all she could think of. So there is this scared 12-year-old suddenly bleeding and handed like this nappy. Just go do. Nobody told me. And as I said, I don't hold this against my mum. I'm sure she's exactly the same with my sister. Although when my sister came, there's 8 years between me and my sister. So, she had a very different puberty than I did in many ways, so. But aren't there in some cultures, correct me if I'm wrong, don't they celebrate them in some cultures, especially the African heritage? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Absolutely. These rites of passage, and this is something I've started to do with mothers and daughters, and starting from a very practical place, because most of us as parents are not armed with the information of how to have these conversations. So we just go, I mean, I hear stories like that all the time. You know, my period was just a non-event. It's this thing I've been so excited and desperate to get, and then it was like, oh, here's a tampon. I put that in. I was like, what fresh hell is this? I mean, you know, and it's so, but there's nowhere to go with that and that knowledge. And I had a very open mum, and we need to start to celebrate it and not give girls this, from the minute it starts, this fear we instill in, like, oh my gosh, they can get pregnant, oh my gosh, don't tell anyone about it. How many women have shoved a tampon up their sleeve in the workplace to go to the toilet? You know, all these things women deal with that men do not have to have this experience. The number of women at work who are suffering with menopausal symptoms and don't feel they can speak to their boss. The number of women going through fertility and IVF treatments that don't feel they can tell their boss. You know, all these experiences women have, we have to start talking about them and putting them on the table, and not shaming them, and empowering women around this. And I believe the way to do that is to start having conversations like this around our cycle, because so many women think they have a cycle if they have a period and that's it. But what is going on inside of our bodies changes every single day, and it affects our skin elasticity, our inflammation, our cognitive function, our mood, everything.
Wow.
And
so I could have a day, because I am a normal human being. I know that. A lot of people think that I seem to have like this incredible self-esteem and all this. No, of course I don't. I do have days. Like even today, I've got more makeup on than I would normally, because my skin is looking a bit flat. Because you know what? I think my period's due next week, so I don't know if whatever. But ever since I've been following you and hearing about the differences, because I'd always knew a little bit. I knew that ovulation, I'd probably be quite horny, because that's when you're more likely to have get pregnant. And obviously I knew ovulation. I generally observed my skin was a bit more glowy. I was a bit more happier, because it all makes sense to me physiologically. Yeah, like obviously that's when you're going to want to most have sex, when you're feeling good and looking good. And then conversely, you know, when my period is about to come, or when I'm on, I don't want, as I was saying in my
leave me alone.
I don't want freaking salads, get me a pizza. But I'm, you know what, it's very weird, because I have had so much self-loathing and self-hatred and all of this, but one thing, I've never ever made myself bad for wanting any kind of food. How weird. I'm very lucky that despite being called fat pretty much every day of my life until I was slim, by the person who's supposed to love me the most, I didn't develop an eating disorder. I can't believe that I didn't develop an eating disorder of any kind, and I really, really don't. So speaking of food, obviously I got you on because I love you and you can help people, and I really want, you know, women and anybody who's a mother, got children, granddaughters, please follow Adele. She does so much amazing work. You give a lot of nurturing. You do a lot of do a lot of events for free as well. So you know, people like you are amazing. Healers like you just want to give out, because you've come from trauma, you know, and anybody who comes from unfortunately trauma and stuff, they are generally more wanting to help. So trying to bring it back now specifically to food. And I love it, guys. I'm going to do a quick digress. Adele, I love this relationship we have. She sent me a message, because the last video I done was on fasting, and she's like, babes, are we gonna have like a conflict of interest, because I'm really not into like fasting at certain times, and you know, my women eat carbs, and I'm like, yay, good, you know. I said, absolutely not. Like, that's why I want you on, because you know, me and my mildly sometimes black and white kind of like, yes, you just must fast. And I even said
don't do it.
Well, I said it in my video. I don't know if you actually watched it, but right towards the end of the video, I talked to Mark, and I was talking about, because he said that people who really shouldn't fast are anybody who's got any overtly emotional attachment to food, whether it's bulimia, anorexia, which are obviously labels, but I just say anybody who's got an unhealthy emotional attachment or relationship to food definitely shouldn't fast anyway. And I was talking about myself, because Mark had kind of talked about the labels, like anorexia and bulimia, and I went, you know, there are people who don't have anorexia or bulimia or orthorexia, I don't think, but when I fast, I get a buzz on. And when I get that buzz on, part of me wants to kind of just go longer and longer and longer, despite me cerebrally knowing that, Ash, you are really effing up your thyroid here. Can you just go and eat? Can you go and eat? Can you go and eat? But there is this kind of weird, so it does happen to everyone. I'm even, you know, privy to it. So I'm really glad we've got a more reasonable voice today to talk about fasting and just general chats around the 4 weeks or the 28 days that makes a menstrual cycle.
And I just want to put something just into this. You don't have to have a womb to be doing this, which I know is going into the woo-woo bit, but you're just going to have to trust me on this. If you are not naturally cycling anymore, you can still connect to this through the phases of the moon, okay? And I teach more about that, but that's in like every book's written by doctors around this. This is how women still connect with their cyclical nature. So if you're sitting here thinking, actually, I take synthetic hormones, or I'm not bleeding anymore because I'm postmenopausal, this still applies, okay? And in lots of ways.
So let me just clarify that. So what you're saying is that every woman, irrespective of if she has a womb, so if she's had a hysterectomy, irrespective of if she's not had a hysterectomy, but she's not bleeding anymore
naturally,
monthly, or she's on a HRT, so she's having a synthetic period, as you call them. How about women on the pill? On the depot, on the implant,
breastfeeding.
So any female, basically, would you say after they hit the menopause? Obviously, not my daughter or your daughters.
No,
they haven't started their period
once they've had their first bleed, this is
great. So for every single female who has had their period onward, this applies.
Absolutely, 100%. So first of all, I'm a massive advocate of intuitive eating, okay? You can read all the books, all the things, but actually what does your body need? And spending time, as our feminine intelligence comes from our body, your body will guide you with what feels right to it. How do you feel after you've eaten the pizza? I mean, there's not many people who go, I feel amazing. Yes, it suits a need, but listen to what your body needs. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about fasting. This is my experience and how I work with women around fasting. Fasting is really good when you're postmenopausal, okay? But when you're still a cycling woman, actually, we know, again, the health benefits that we've been researched are largely based on how men respond to fasting, which is really good. But women have been shown to have, cycling women have been shown to have issues around insulin when they're fasting. And we know that we need good responses to insulin in the body and glucose in order for our hormones to be in balance. And when we're fasting, this affects that. You mentioned the thyroid earlier. Women are much more prone to thyroid imbalances than men are, even if they're not picked up through sort of, the broad range of tests that you're so familiar with, Ashvi. So this can really throw women out when we're fasting, because it negatively affects cortisol, it negatively affects estrogen and progesterone. And this just starts to, it's actually even been shown to shrink the ovaries in women. So it's really important that if you choose to fast, you either do it at the right phase of your cycle, which I'll go into a little bit more. And it's the same with the keto diet. Like I love the keto diet. I'm a fan. But at certain phases of your cycle, you need to be taking in good carbs into the body. Okay, it's just what the body needs. Because again, you don't want it to start affecting your thyroid. So we can talk about that a little bit into the phases. But does that all make sense?
It really does. And I just want to quickly ask you, because obviously I'm a massive proponent of fasting with caveats. You said from your experience, and is that because are your clients predominantly slim?
Yes, okay. I would say that. So the majority
of
what I'm
also
the research around it.
Yeah, so predominantly, so maybe in women who've got weight to lose, we could talk about better ways of doing it at particular times of your cycle.
Definitely.
And another thing about fasting is that, there is obviously your time restricted feeding, but there's also just this, like, don't snack.
Yeah.
Like, is that something you advocate? Like, so, you can fast. You could do this modified kind of fast where you have your really lovely, mindful, intuitive breakfast with your family, sat down with no screens, eating real food from England that's been cooked. Thank you very much. 7 a.m. And then you can have your lunch at 1 p.m. And you've actually got 5 hours between there.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
you are doing almost like a little mini fast.
I think it's about understanding fasting, and I think what happens is people pull something really quickly they've seen on the internet that's being advocated and think it means that you don't eat for you suddenly go into not eating for 16 hours.
And then when you eat crap.
Yeah, and then it's like, and
even if you're feeling like bloody starving, or you're depressed, or you've had a really shitty night's sleep, they still should fast. I mean, I don't agree with that at all. It is a way of life, and you do have to fit it into your side. Like this week,
that's coming to you.
I can't stop
eating. You understand it.
I normally eat one meal a day, as you know. This week I've eaten 3 meals a day,
But your
starting at 9
period,
a.m.
you've just said you're going towards your period, and
Absolutely.
that's right.
And
So
then,
when you've got to look at us from from an evolutionary, biological perspective. Women are here to procreate, right? So our body is designed
and rule the world, love. Come on, and rule the
well,
world.
that's obviously what we're doing, but from a very evolutionary perspective, that is what our body's designed to do. So all of our energy goes into that bleed or ovulating. So women can find they need more carbs around ovulation because those ovaries are working really, really hard.
Wow.
And then all of our energy when we're bleeding is going into that womb to get rid of it and repair it. So our immunity actually goes down around our period, and we're more prone to picking things up because all the energy is going to our cycle. And as women, we're leading up, our body's preparing to do this. So all right now, actually, you're in your pre-menstrual phase. So all your hormones are going down, 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 right? Inflammation is going up, your cognitive function is reducing, your ability to digest food is going to be reduced because all the energy is going into the womb. Yet we're still trying to do the same thing every day. So this same thing, everyday approach to women doesn't work. It works beautifully for men because their body isn't changing every day. But for women, it is. And then we're going, why is this food plan not working for me? Why is this exercise regime not working for me? I'm going to the gym every day and smashing it. My husband's doing really well on this plan and I'm not. I'm a failure. There's something with me. This inner critic jumps in and then we're out and then we eat the cake, right? That's the cycle.
We eat the cake and then we feel guilty about eating the cake.
Yeah. Because we've never been taught how to eat in alignment with our body, how to nourish our body in alignment with our biology. We're working against it and we're fucked, you know, and then we crash land into perimenopause and go, oh my gosh, what is wrong with me? We're back into this. What's wrong with me? Nothing's wrong with you. You've never been taught how to eat or move or live in alignment with your cycle. And when you start to do this, your libido goes up, you digest your food beautifully, everything just flows. And it's simple. It's really simple. So
start us then, darling, if you don't mind. So should we start with week 1 being the week you bleed, or how would you like to do it?
So let's first of all, you are a cyclical being, as I've said. We haven't just got a period and then a bit of ovulation. All of this is 4 phases to a woman's cycle, and this is called the infradian rhythm. So we have the circadian rhythm that men and women have, which is our 24-hour cycle. Now you think how you feel if you fly to Australia for one day and you mess with your circadian rhythm, right? Jet lag is a killer. Now women have this second innate timekeeper, this biological reproductive system that is on its own timekeeper, roughly 28 days, but nowhere near perfect to that. Roughly 28 days. And we have messed with that month after month after month, decade after decade after decade. And then we wonder why we're so tired and out of balance. So, but the good news is the body wants to rebalance quickly, right? Once we start doing this work, the body wants to come back into homeostasis and rebalance. So this cycle I'm talking about has 4 phases. We have menstruation. So day 1 is the first day of your bleed. Then the bleed finishes and we start our pre-ovulation phase when our hormones, our estrogen is starting to rise. Then we get to ovulation. Estrogen peaks, our testosterone peaks. We release our egg, everything. Like, the world's a great place to be in when that's happening.
It really is.
Right? We're like, hi.
Oh my God. I love myself when I'm ovulating.
Yeah, and we digest really well. We've got, all our energy. And then for a little while that carries on and then everything starts to drop. No egg's been put in, progesterone starts to rise. And then there's there's no egg implanting. Let's start the cycle again. So everything drops again. Our energy drops, inflammation goes up. We're tired yet we're still trying to push through at the gym, Stop doing it. It's not serving you. It's making you feel worse. So we'll start with the menstruation phase. Okay, so this phase, it's really important to replace our minerals. And
do you mind if I make some notes? So I'm just going to make some little shirt notes after this, because I think this is really important, and maybe I can start somehow adding this onto the medical school syllabus. So phase 1.
So phase 1, so you've got to think, this is the phase where usually we reach for the pizza, which is literally the worst phase to do that, because all your energy's in your womb and not in your gut to break down these foods. They're inflammation forming foods, which are going to be making you feel crapper, especially if you suffer with PMT and things already. So when you start to live in alignment with your cycle, the biggest gift women get is energy. So even if some of this stuff sounds like, oh my God, there's no way I've got the capacity or the energy to do this, you will do. Okay, so just start to do these things. So iron, so your red meats, things like salmon, your bone broth for all the minerals. You want B12 vitamins coming through here, your seaweed, your mushrooms, getting your zinc in your body. Green veg for your inflammation, helping to reduce this inflammatory response. But comfort food, like easy digest, this is not the time for a salad, you know, and your body will be telling you that. You even said it earlier. You're like, I don't want to be.
Babes, I'm a little bit confused. We're talking about, sorry, if I'm confused, it could be that my audience confused, or it could just be that I'm being slow, innit? This is our period week, right?
This is our period.
We're bleeding. So on one hand, you're like green veg, mushroom, seaweed,
Cooked.
steak.
Cooked.
But then on the other hand, you're like junk food. I'm getting a bit confused.
No, I'm not saying the junk food.
Not junk food.
Yeah,
Okay.
this is
sorry
if that's not clear.
Sorry, I got that wrong.
You want to eat that, but it's not serving you.
Try not to, because it's the worst time to do it.
Absolutely.
Possibly. Okay, cool.
Absolutely. Sorry if that wasn't clear. So what I'm saying is, in this phase, is make it easy. So when you're ovulating, and we'll come on to this in a minute, batch cook. Fill your freezer with stews, soups, all this stuff's there. So my lunch and dinners are done for this week. We're not phoning the takeaway. I mean, the odd takeaway is fine, right? You know, this isn't about a restrictive thing, but when you're nourishing your body, it means your body's getting everything to support you in that bleed and your energy, and it's all done for you. Okay, so it's comfort, it's easy to digest. Your body's not going, oh my gosh, I've got to take some energy away from my womb to break down this cheese or whatever it is. It's just all being allowed to do what the body needs to do. I like to include really warming spices in this time to support the blood flow, so like your cinnamons, any of the spices.
It sounds very similar to what they'd be saying in Chinese medicine.
Yeah,
as well. Warming and Ayurveda as well.
Yeah,
Ayurveda,
absolutely. So you don't want cold foods. This is not the time for your smoothies during this phase. We want to keep the body warm and nourished.
And you can make comfort foods healthy. I mean, you could have some, you know, with all that iron and that seaweed and the mushrooms, you could have some nice grass-fed buttery mash.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, you can have your slow cooker. Have the slow cooker going. You know, chuck it all in the morning. It's ready by the end. Or chop everything up and freeze it during your back. You know, whatever. But this is the phase. You put your slow cooker to work for you. Chuck it in, turn it on, and forget about it. And put in, the seaweed can be chucked in there. It'll just disintegrate while it's cooking. Right. And hydrate. You're losing fluid. Keep the body well hydrated.
You're losing blood, aren't you? And some women, unfortunately, have got so many heavy periods are like, you know, the norm nowadays anyway. Heavy and long, you know. So you're losing blood. So absolutely. Okay.
Yeah. So they're my top tips for that phase.
Week 1. Yeah.
And then we transition
phase
into
1.
our next phase, which is our pre-ovulation. So and what my biggest tip for women in this phase: rest. Okay. Scrap the play dates. Park the gym, forget your exercise goals. Do not be powering through, burning the candle at both ends, because you're going to be taken from the empty cup. Okay, so nourishing, rest. Then we go into our pre-ovulation. And
would you recommend any kind of rest exercise, darling? Like even gentle stuff like yoga, perhaps? Or
if people want to feel like they want to go for a walk, you know, maybe do some nice yoga, nothing inverted, so you don't want to be upside down when the blood's trying to flow out. But just gentle movement. But you know what, if you want to spend the day, I mean, most women go, yeah, right, like I've got the time to do that, but you know, sit there under a blanket and watch the TV eating raw chocolate. You know, raw chocolate's amazing for this phase. It's packed full of magnesium, which supports with cramps, supports with sleeping, which can go out at this phase. So just, even if it's 5 minutes with a cup of tea, lock the kids in a cupboard or something, just sit outside.
Can I come and bring my kid and lock her in your cupboard?
No.
Actually, do you know what? Let's not leave those 3 together. Like, goodness, man.
So that's your phase 1. So then we're transitioning. If we've rested in that phase, we're going to come out of this phase. And this is where we start to be a bit like Superwoman. This next phase to me is like the 1990s businesswoman, glasses on, pinstripe suit, briefcase. Like, I'm going for it. This is the phase of the to-do list, right?
This is the pre-ovulation. Phase 2, pre-ovulation.
We're rising, okay? Our hormones are starting to come back to us. Digestion gets better. Our appetite usually decreases during this phase.
Yeah.
And this is because we've got an increase in estrogen, and this works with our insulin in this phase. So it's all about sort of balancing out the sugars. So you want really low carb foods. So you're going to be like a massive advocate of the foods in this phase. It's brilliant. You can get low carb. Sorry, I'm just low carb. You're so clever, man. Period week. I'm just a geek, Ashby. Like,
no, you're not. We love geeks anyway. It's a period week. It's like low energy. I mean, like low energy stuff. Like healthy food as much as you can, avoid all the play dates and stuff, but by week 2 it's all beginning to
back in,
energy is going to go back in. Yeah.
And this is where our energy is rising, right? So if you're somebody who goes, I just don't have energy, work with your period, go in this period and rest, and then you will find like, oh my gosh, I'm on it this week. But watch her, because she will fill your diary you'll be like, oh my god, I've got this, and you'll be like, yes, and you open your diary and your premenstrual will be like, oh my god, what have I done? This is a nightmare. Okay, so just watch her. But this is like, you can have your salads, your raw foods, because you've got much more energy to digest them and break them down. You know, your olive oil, your nuts, your seeds. Pumpkin and flax are good in this phase, but I will talk about seed cycling separately to this so it doesn't confuse it.
Okay, perfect. Pumpkin and flax specifically, you were saying?
Definitely.
Okay,
so you know, and then as you get a bit closer to your ovulation, which is around day 14, right? So as we've had all the energy in the womb when we're bleeding, and then it's gone back out to the body to do its thing, as we head towards ovulation, it takes work to release those eggs, right? So you might find that, again, you get a bit hungry around this phase. So you might want to bring in your complex carbs here. So like your squashes, sweet potatoes, you know, your roasted veg, just to help the body there.
Root vegetables, British foods.
Yeah.
You know how I feel about British foods. Yeah.
Love it. And then we transition into ovulation. Okay. And this is like the fun phase, you know, go out to the dinner parties, have the glass of wine, you know, your body can cope with this stuff at this phase. Okay, it's a really external giving phase. It's actually the phase that society expects women to be in all the bloody time, which is why we're exhausted. But it's our giving phase. Okay, it's the phase, and this is the phase I say batch cook, because you've got the energy. It's like nice being in the kitchen. It's like a really enjoyable phase to do this, and your premenstrual and period phase will thank you for it later in the month. So like things like eggs, really good during this phase, having really hearty breakfast, protein, fat breakfasts. A common thing I would say throughout this, particularly at this phase, is your cruciferous vegetables. They're so good for hormone health, right? Your broccolis, your cauliflowers, to be pulling out that excess estrogen, because you're going to have this rise in estrogen, and then you need to support your liver to get rid of that, because so many of us are estrogen dominant, right? Because of our lifestyles. So these cruciferous vegetables really help to get rid of that. So then we have our ovulation. Then I mean, I'm keeping this quite simple because I'm conscious that for a lot of women, this is the first time like, I have a cycle. What do you mean? I don't just bleed. So this is usually the response I get.
I'm allowed to rest? What?
Yeah, what?
That memo?
I'm going to be better if I have a rest. Okay, so this is it.
My boss doesn't let me do that.
Exactly. And then we go into the final stage, which most women do recognize a change in themselves. It's like this PMT phase, right? It's our luteal phase. So this is where everything's starting to drop. It's, well, you know, we're starting to go, okay, there's no baby. Time to get back to work to release it. So this is where we can have our blood sugar crashes, which, you know, we have this stereotypical of women stuff in their faces during this phase because the sugars crash, and this affects PMT. So if we start to manage this in this phase, some women can see quite a dramatic drop in PMT in this phase. So again, we're wanting the high protein, high fats to balance these sugars during this phase. Our digestive system can really go out of whack. So quite often women, you know, again, this is something we don't talk about, period poos. You know, quite a lot of women will go, oh my gosh, I have like this poo right before my period and then I bleed. And that's because of the progesterone, and the gut drops. So there's not as much muscular. Women can get constipated coming during this phase. So
I always get constipated pre-period.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, so annoying.
Yeah, it's because the hormones have shifted in your body. So we think that these hormones just make us ovulate or bleed. They do so much else. They in our body, you know, they help us manage stress. For example, when estrogen drops in menopause, women's anxiety goes up, and they're like, why have I suddenly turned crazy? Well, you haven't. Your body's not got estrogen in the same way anymore, which manages the cortisol levels that make you stressed. And it's like, oh, and just knowing that, I'm not crazy. There's nothing wrong with me. It's really empowering, but I won't digress. So lots of fiber in this phase. Again, staying hydrated is really important. Managing those sugar cravings with having like power balls with the nuts, the seeds, keep them in the freezer. Again, batch cook them up. I've got a massive pot of mine in the freezer. They're there. So we want to make this phase easy because our energy is dropping and inflammation is starting to go up. So and our cognitive function's dropping. This is where like most women's head can spin off like something out of The Exorcist because someone's left a fork on the side, because our truth filter's off, and all the shit that we put up with the rest of the month is like, I've had enough. I'm not doing it anymore. And actually look out for those outbursts, because there's truth in them. There's something showing that something's out of balance in your life. So having the meat, you know, like slow cooked meat, nice, easy to digest, nut seeds, this time sunflower and sesame seeds. Again, I'll talk about this in a minute. And chocolate, have the raw chocolate, you know, not the processed dairy stuff, like dairy, I won't say any names, but, you know, have the beautiful raw chocolate, cups of cacao, you know, it's going to packed full of antioxidants, loads of nutrition, and you can sit and stuff your face guilt-free. So those are my, like, you can go a lot deeper into this, but as top tips for each phase, and you start to bring that in with the rest and the energy, things start to change. You sleep better. You know, this is a phase that your sleep goes out. People, you know, you get quite restless during this phase because everything's dropped. And we go, why am I not sleeping? What's the matter with me? What's nothing on my mind? But go, so then what we do when we recognize that, we put in really good sleep routines for ourselves. I'm going to need some extra help. I'm going to use some oils tonight. I'm going to have an Epsom salt bath tonight because I know that my sleep gets disrupted and so I'm going to go to bed earlier. I need more rest. And we fill that cup. We fill it up. We fill it up. We fill it up, and we feel better.
When did you really observe? I think my audience loves personal stories. When did you really start becoming so specific? And did you start observing your periods like this?
Oh my God, like a few years ago, my period came, it went. It was like, you know, it does its thing. It doesn't really bother me. Thankfully, I have no real issues with it. But then after my second baby, I got PMT, this hormone balance, and I was like, what's this? You know, come from? And that's like deepened my journey into it and rebalancing that. And it just fascinates me. So it's just been a journey over the last few years of implementing these little things. And I think there's so much women that we feel like, oh my gosh, I've got to do this exercise regime, I've got to drink the green juice, I've got to have this, I've got to be doing all this stuff, and it's overwhelming when we're already overwhelmed. So the way I like to work with women is like just this little bit, make this little change, and we do it bit by bit by bit until it becomes, because I believe micro changes become the macro, and over time, and it's manageable because your body's done this for a long time, right? And we make small simple changes that have a big effect, and then it's like, okay, just give yourself permission to stop for half an hour when you bleed.
I think I need to do a live with you about this permission that we need to give ourselves, because, you know, I'm seeing it more. And I think, you know what, as I said, weirdly, I often analyze myself, and I am shocked that with my childhood and whatnot, I am very kind to myself around my, like, I absolutely order takeaways. I'm obviously not doing it the healthy way, but what I'm saying is emotionally, I'm very much like, the house is a mess, give a shit.
Good.
Cycle.
But
I've always been like that, and I don't know how. That's what I'm saying. I find that very strange. And you know,
we're a generation that are here to be the change that the world needs. I know that sounds really hippy dippy, but I believe that. So we're not doing the things that our foremothers did, you know. And for me, we need to normalize women having messy houses, you know, this crazy thing that we do. If someone's coming round and the whole house has to be like blitzed within an inch of its life, like, my house is messy sometimes.
My house is messy most of the time, and I don't apologize for anything.
No,
like,
this
if
is
you
how it
knew
is.
what I did in a day, because clean houses and all of that, you know, let's be honest. Yes, it's nice to live in a clean house, but when you are over clean, it's a form of, you know, as we know, it's ego. You just want to show the world that you're very like house proud. And at the end of the day, these, you know, I used to be like that while my mental health was going crazy. Gotta do this, like, actually, no, you don't. It's just your house. Who cares how it looks?
Again, it's this pressure on women. You know, it's not my husband running around cleaning the house when everyone's coming around. It's me going,
but it's also not your husband saying, darling, do you want to clean it up? I know, Adam, okay?
And like, it's not. It's that ingrained in us. This is my responsibility. Why is that house?
No, it's not.
Responsibility.
No, it's not.
You know, and this is what's starting to happen for women. It's like, we're tired. We've had enough of this invisible load that we are carrying. And if we're going to be expected to have this untenable amount of responsibilities, being the family's rememberer for everything, the form filler, the phone call maker, the email sender, as well as running our businesses. I mean, I swear that my kids have been back at school 2 weeks. If I have to fill out one more form, I'm not going to be responsible for it. I got a form. Can you consent to her wearing goggles in swimming? I was like, I'm out. Like, this is.
Are you serious? Why do they need consent for goggles?
Who knows? Who knows? But we're digressing from digestion.
Yes. So now let's talk about the seeds, because this is, you know, I love it when women can get practical tips.
Yeah.
You know, we know seeds
So-
are really good for you anyway. They're not genetically modified either, so I don't mind them.
Yeah, amazing.
Let's talk. Which seeds you mentioned a little bit.
This is something that is really simple for women to do. It's a naturopathic remedy, and it's a way of using food to balance your hormones. Now, I would say that probably the majority of women in Western culture have a hormone imbalance, but we're desensitized to it. Would you agree?
Oh, I would 150% agree with you. I'd put
Yeah.
a percentage on it of about 90% of women have a hormonal issue, whether it's their periods, their menopause, and then, you know,
Anxiety,
as we touched upon anxiety,
thyroid.
all the hormones are related. So thyroid hormones and are related, like thyroid, anxiety, insulin, estrogen, they're all connected.
It's a system. It's
completely connected. Yeah.
So this is something you can do, okay? And it sounds like a lot at first, but it's really not, okay? So in day 1 to 14, so from your bleed to ovulation, during this phase, having 2 tablespoons a day of flaxseed and pumpkin seed, right? Okay, this is really good at boosting your estrogen. So in this phase, your estrogen is rising. So this is what we want to make us, all those things we were saying, how we feel when we're in that phase. These seeds help to do that. Now, you think 2 tablespoons a day. Actually, there's loads of different ways you can get them into your food. So you can mill them down. I quite like to do this. So depending, you can put them over your breakfast. If you're having smoothies or something in that phase, you can stick them into that. You can sprinkle them over salads. I'm sure you have got like far more.
Did you say pumpkin seeds? I mean, you can make them into a hummus. Pumpkin seeds. Did you say pumpkin and flax? Yeah. So flax, flax can obviously go into porridge, and you know it's tasteless, so it could even go to savory dishes like soups. It will thicken it up. Khichdi, dal, etc., etc. And then pumpkin.
Amazing.
I mean, pumpkin seeds, you can eat them just like that. They taste really nice.
Yeah, roast them up. Amazing.
Roast it,
so
put them on hummus.
having that.
Grind them up with some tahini. Oh no, sesame seeds are coming in a minute.
Yeah, they're coming. So then after ovulation, so like day 15 to 28, and one thing I encourage all women to do, track your own cycle. I'm giving you very average times here. Your cycle will be unique and beautiful to you. And you can, I've got a Vimeo, on my Vimeo channel, there's a whole thing explaining this. You can go onto my website and download your own tracker to do this.
Thank you, honey, because I was actually going to ask you which, I know we've quick digression, sorry, but I was actually going to ask you which app you think is a really good app for tracking like cycles in relation to potentially the moon and stuff like that, because all of that makes a difference, as we know. But we'll talk about that in a second. Let's just finish the seat. You and I and our tangents, man.
I know, I could talk all day.
I know.
So during that phase, we want to boost your progesterone. So this is the hormone we want to build up. And not a lot of women, it's not uncommon for women to have low levels of progesterone, right? So we want to boost that. And this is where our sunflower and our sesame seeds come in. So again, 2 tablespoons a day of that during this phase naturally helps the body to balance. And you put your cruciferous vegetables in that's going to be drawing out any excess estrogen. You know, that's a really powerful way to take control of your own health. We are so disempowered from our bodies, especially as women. You know, we look at how we give birth. It's a sterile process. It's become a medical process, but it's the most natural thing in the world for us to do. When we go through IVF or fertility treatments, it's a sterile medical process. So having something that you can take control of yourself is really empowering. So that's seed cycling. If you feel you have a hormone imbalance, this is a really lovely thing you can introduce to your body.
That's really simple. That's just 4 seeds. You're saying flax and pumpkin first 2 weeks. Sunflower and sesame the second 2 weeks. That's just 4 seeds they have to go and buy. On a quick caveat, please don't go to Costco and buy like kilos and kilos of the stuff. They have fats in them. They go rancid. You know, just buy good quality. I'm always going on and on and on about this.
And they're not expensive.
You know, with your sesame seed one for the last 2 weeks, could they just do like a tablespoon of tahini or something? Would you say? I mean, again, I'm not like, we were talking to, I don't know if I was talking to somebody about it the other day. They said, I made my own tahini, Ash. And I'm like, yeah, it's just roasted sesame seeds pulverized. And you know, it just got me thinking that this is another thing we should be doing. So when you are buying your jars of tahini from like whatever, Tesco's, we don't know, again, how long they've been sat there for. So,
and what the percentage is.
So I'm going to basically rewind on what I just said. Like, no, don't have tahini, have sesame seeds.
I'm a fan of eating the whole food. I know there's the whole in there, and being in control of what it is. If you can make stuff at home, the better. But let's be honest, we're all time poor. So, you know,
But you could, though, all of these seeds, other than potentially the flax, because it just doesn't taste as nice, but you probably could. You could literally just sprinkle onto food. A tablespoon is not going to be that hard after a while.
I do like once or 2 weeks, 1 or 2 weeks, I just do a whole tray of all those seeds, chuck some like all over them and some sprinkling, roast them for 10 minutes, put them in a Tupperware bowl, and then they're done all day. They're there to go. It's
and you
easy.
can add your spices.
Yeah.
So you could do a savory version with your cinnamon and you know, look, I you know how
Cayenne pepper, black pepper.
I'm not anti-sugar personally, like as a doc. I'm just the amount of sugar we're having. So you could potentially even put a bit of honey in or something.
Definitely.
Make it into like a.
I would say if you're somebody who's experiencing something like endometriosis, PMT, something that's like pain related around your cycle, you want to be avoiding all inflammatory foods as much as possible. So, you know, if you can avoid putting that, have a savory version instead, that's what I'd say. But if you're healthy and you've got a normal cycle, then yeah, absolutely.
Oh, do you know what, honey? I think we'll end now because we've got 20 minutes or so, and I don't want to overwhelm people.
No.
Because that was, you know, actually really helpful for me. Thank you. And just generally, just love having these conversations. You know, today, as I was walking Nana to school, one of the mums pulled me over, and her daughter's 10, and she says, Ash, you know, do you mind if I just quickly ask you? Like, yeah, absolutely. I've been having some discharge, you know. And she went all quiet because Nana was there. Nana's 7. Having some discharge. And I'm like, what? Vaginal discharge?
Yeah. We have a vagina. It's not a furf. It's not a mini. It's a vagina.
Oh, even today, then I was like, my foofy. I was like, okay, do you know what? You're 7. Yeah. We need to stop with foofy. We need to go to vagina.
It's a vagina.
Vagina, penis, testicles. Yeah. Anyway, but bless her, you know, she was an English mum, and she was talking about her daughter who's 10, who's having this just discharge and whatnot. And I'm like, it's completely normal, by the way. And I said, has she started her periods? Like, just saying it like that. And the mum looked at me as if like, your kid's there. Do you
for me?
Not like in a bad way or anything. Yeah. And I just said, listen, I said, Haley, I said, sweetie, don't worry. I was like, Nana doesn't know what a period is yet, but actually she's 7, and I might start having that discussion with her because she's asked me what my moon cups were when I use a moon cup now. Before I used to use tampons, and she'd see them lying around everywhere, you know, and I want to be very, very different around periods and talking to her about it.
There
but without
amazing books. There's some amazing books. Dr. Christiane Northrup did one. I think it's called My Beautiful Body, which is nice for like little girls to start to love their body and realize that it's a really beautiful story. And then when they get to like tween age, there's a lovely book called Reaching for the Moon by Lucy Pearce. And we've just been asked a question what the 4 seeds were. So for days 1 to 14, it's flax and pumpkin. And for day 15 to 28, it's sunflower and sesame. So I hope that helps. But, you know, the earlier we start talking to our boys and our girls about this stuff, the more we start to normalize it. You know, I'm telling you, if men have periods, it wouldn't be taboo. And you wouldn't have to pay for sanitary products.
Mate, if men had periods, they'd probably get paid for them, number one. You know, they'd probably get a day off every week. They'd be down at the pub at period week. Like, oh, I'm bleeding. I'm dying. I love men.
I do. I love it. I've got a great man. I love men.
Your man is amazing.
He's a good guy.
Sure. All right, guys,
thank you so much for having me, Ash. If anyone's got any questions, I'm so happy to answer anything.
Please, anybody, you have to follow Adele. Like, she is just such a wealth of knowledge, and you know, anybody who gives this much time nurturing, you know, deserves. Anyway, but there's information on her social medias on everything to do with women's health, pretty much, really. And I think we are going to do another live hopefully in 3 to 4 weeks time, because I think Adele and I feel very strongly about self-love and self-compassion. And I think we need to talk about that, because we do, don't we? We just need women to start loving themselves more and taking it easier and just doing less. You know, I'm always talking about people. I always give my example of how I've maintained 58 kilo frame since the past 5 years is eating more than I've ever eaten, not exercising when I don't feel like it, and doing less. And they're like, eh? I said, because it's all up here. That's what you need to start getting. Like that, doing more is being driven by something. I really genuinely don't think people like doing things like housework and whatnot, but when we do it to the degree we do it, you know, you just think, why? What is this for? Who is it for? And that's things we need to start asking ourselves. Cool. All right, darling.
Thank you so much.
Love you lots.
Have a lovely day.
You too, darling. Take care. Bye.